It's a hot day, and you're busy working your seemingly endless shift as a janitor in a big, world-famous company. You're tired, so you rest your back against a wall to catch your breath. Just then, something in the corner catches your attention. You pick it up, and to your surprise, it's 100 grand in cash. That's the best thing that could ever happen to you, right? Wrong. For this young man, it was so much more. This is the story of Richard Montañez, the flame behind Frito-Lay's Flamin Hot Cheetos. Picking grapes. To truly understand this story, we would take a trip all the way back to the 60s, when a Mexican family of 14 immigrated to a labor camp in Guasti, a small farming town in California. Here, young Richard shared a one-room cinder block residence with his parents, grandfather, and 10 other siblings. As a team, they tried to make a stable living by picking grapes in the vineyards, alongside the other families on the camp. The little money they made was insufficient to get by, hence the inevitable struggles of life in a strange land. As if this wasn't enough, Richard had to go to an all-white school. In his words, "I remember my mom getting me ready for school one day, and I was crying. I couldn't speak English." That's a pretty valid concern for a little boy who only knew how to speak Spanish in a class full of English-speaking kids. But his mother won't back down. She got him ready for school anyways. It was at this point that it hit him: the rough, thorny path of racial discrimination. It ranged from separation to denial, everything in the books. He had to share a rickety green bus with the other colored kids, while the white kids rode in a fancy yellow bus. He was also denied certain basic privileges, and the list could go on and on. Little by little, it grew in on him. "I'm not good enough for the yellow bus," he would often tell his mother, but little Richard was too naive to see that in all of this, his potential was being brewed. The Burrito Experience. It's 1963, and Richard was now in the 3rd grade. One day, the bell rang for recess. Yeah, you know it. That international sound every child understands, irrespective of class, race, or culture. Richard took his lunchbox just like the other kids, and they all settled down outside to eat. He pulled out his lunch and made to take a hearty bite, but stopped and put it back. He said,
"Back because everybody in that whole playground was staring at me. And the reason they were staring at me, because it was a burrito."
The kids hadn't seen that before, and they wouldn't stop looking. Richard was embarrassed. The next day, Richard told his mom,
"Make me a bologna sandwich and a cupcake like the other kids, because I don't want to be different."
He whined all about his shortcomings and the obvious toll the discrimination was taking on his self-image and worth. Richard's mother, being stubborn as always, made 2 burritos the next day.
And she said, "Here's one for you, and here's one to share with a friend."
So he went to school and shared a burrito with a friend that day. By the end of the week, his mother's burritos had become so popular that he was selling them for $25 a piece. Following that incident, he realized even at that young age that there had to be something about being different. That was a revelation that would lead to a revolution in his life, and it marked the birth of an entrepreneurial giant. Quitting school. Although the other colored kids suffered the same fate as himself, Richard always got the sour end of the deal. This was largely due to his inability to comprehend the simple English language. So, he made a decision that would forever be his greatest undoing. He dropped out of school in the 4th grade. From this point on, his life took a turn for a struggle that was alien to the other children around. Richard took on any and every job, from slaughtering chickens at a poultry farm to plowing the fields beneath the burning sun, washing cars, and picking weeds. As the years rolled by, he became increasingly frustrated. There was evidently no path out of his poverty. That was until 1976. One enable informed him of a job opportunity that would forever change his life. The Frito-Lay factory in the Rancho Cucamonga was in need of a janitor. He would earn $4, a pay that was many multiples of what he earned on the fields. It represented a better life and financial freedom. This was a symbol of light at the end of the tunnel. He was 18 years old at this point and still couldn't read or write, so he had his wife help him fill in the application. He then traveled across town to meet the hiring manager and got the job instantly. He was excited to tell his family about this. It was on this day that his grandfather gave him an advice that would become his maxim over the next few years. Make sure that floor shines and let them know that they Montagnais mopped it. Richard decided that he was going to be the best janitor Frito-Lay ever had, and he quickly got to it. It was a different experience for me. Every time someone walked into the room, it would smell fresh. I realized there is no such thing as just a janitor when you believe you're going to be the best. In his spare time, he would stay in the warehouse, watching the machines as they rolled out bouts of plain Frito chips. He grew an insatiable curiosity to know how they were made, an action that would birth his success story. Wow, this has been a thrilling and inspiring story so far, but stick with me cause it gets spicy from here. Stormy times. This was sometime in 1980, just when things began to look great for Richard. The Frito-Lay company hit rocky times. Sales rates began to fall drastically, and the company began to take a headlong dive for bankruptcy. This development phased every staff and stakeholder. For that reason, the CEO of Frito-Lay Co., Roger Enrico, in a public address, encouraged every staff to act like an owner, and while others brushed it off, Richard took it personal. I was going to step up to the game and find a solution to the problem, whether it is my job or not. With that, Richard took it upon himself to brainstorm for ideas that were likely to help the company. After almost 10 years of mopping floors, 26-year-old Richard summoned the courage to ask a salesman if he could help out on his day off. While at the store, as the salesman restocked inventory, Richard scanned the shelves. I saw products on the shelves and they were all plain. Lay's, Fritos, Ruffles, and right next to these chips happened to be some Mexican spices. Then he made a fortuitous discovery. There weren't any products targeting the Latino market. People like him who loved traditional spices. But that was just an observation. It was only after 2 weeks when Richard was eating some elotes, a Mexican variety of corn sprinkled with chili, lime juice, and salt, that he realized,
What if I put chili on a Cheeto?
And that was when it struck him. He had come up with an idea that would make him the godfather of Hispanic marketing in America. A stroke of luck. While working on a shift on a cold night, his machine watching escapades finally paid off. Richard noticed a broken machine on the assembly line, which left off a lot of understand Cheeto chips. He considered this a stroke of luck and gathered some which he took home to his wife, Judy. Together, this spiced up the Cheetos and came up with a recipe. A quick consumer test amongst friends and family proved that his creation was great. So, basking on the wings of positive feedback, Richard did something that no one else dared to do or ever thought of doing. He called the CEO, Roger Enrico. Roger's executive assistant picked the call and, after thoroughly questioning Richard, passed the call to the CEO. When asked about this in an interview years later, Richard said, "I didn't know what protocol was. I don't think I could spell the word at that time, let alone know what it meant." That's a valid claim coming from an immigrant 4th grade dropout, but what really caught Enrico's attention were the balls of janitor to make a direct call to the CEO of the company. He had broken protocol. Richard didn't know any better. He happily informed Enrico that he had taken his advice and pitched his idea regardless. A pleased Enrico promised to be at the plant in Cucamonga in 2 weeks. This infuriated a lot of people, including the then plant manager who pushed the entire responsibility of making a presentation to Richard, since he'd invited the CEO over in the first place. Richard was terrified. He barely knew how to read or write, and he hadn't even done homework in school. Now he had to make a presentation. "I'm in trouble," he told his wife when he got home that evening. Judy calmed his nerves with kind words and took him to a library to look for books on marketing. Together, they copied the first 5 paragraphs of a book they had chosen and came up with a marketing strategy. At home, they filled about 100 plastic bags with their spiced Cheetos, sealed them with an iron and manually drew logos and designs on each pack. He bought his first $3 tie for the presentation and was ready early the next morning. Richard got to the office and made the presentation the best he could. Everyone liked it. He was proud of himself and on top of the world. Then, an executive stopped him and asked bluntly, "How much market share do you think you can make?" Oh boy, Richard was bummed. Maybe he celebrated too early. He didn't know what that meant or how to respond to it. Intuitively, Richard spread out his arms and said, "This much market share." This simplicity and ingenuity thrilled Mr. Enrico. He stood up and said with a big smile, "Quit your cleaning job, you're coming with us." And this moment marked the beginning of Montañez's breakthrough.
I'm the best.
A Flamin Hot Lie? It is nothing new that such a revolutionary tale would experience some setback. There has to be a villain, right? This was indeed the case for Richard's story. Opposition to the Flamin Hot revolution sprung up almost immediately. After 6 months, the Frito-Lay company began market testing Richard's idea in small Latino markets in East Los Angeles. But that was only a trial run. He knew that the company would scratch the idea if it didn't make rounds in the market soon enough. There were people who were furious at Richard's quick rise to fame and wanted to make sure he went no further. They put up restrictions, genius plans to make sure the product never sold. To this, the marketing genius in Richard had an answer. He put together a team of family and friends who would go to the test markets, buy some Flamin Hot Cheetos, and leave great reviews. In 1992, Flamin Hot Cheetos were officially released nationwide, and has been one of their biggest product launches of all time. The success of the product was so huge that an entire product line was made around it. A rap song has also been written about it. This success hasn't gone unnoticed. In the year 2020, Richard put together a book about his career as the creator of the Flamin Hot Cheetos, which he called Flamin Hot. But on the eve of the release of that book, the Los Angeles Times published the results of a year-long investigation. It was aimed at portraying Richard's story as a lie, cooked up just for clout. They dubbed it, "The Man Who Didn't Invent Flamin Hot Cheetos." They claimed that his stories were just claims and that the spicy snack we all know and love today was more than likely conjured up at the Frito-Lay's headquarters in Texas, rather than in the humble kitchen of some Spanish-speaking Mexican immigrant in Rancho Cucamonga. Well, let's keep the emphasis on likely. This development sure caused a stir and a rampage of emotions amongst the masses. Many were of the assertion that Richard's story indeed sounded too good to be true, while a few others believed that the road to success, as William Shakespeare put it, never did run smooth. However, the book, Flamin Hot, was eventually released and became a bestseller. In a bid to confirm the origin of the product, an effort was made to contact Roger Enrico, who unfortunately died in 2016. However, the executive assistant who had picked Montañez's call that day was contacted, and she remembered the call like it was yesterday. Now, that's 1 point for Richard Montañez, and a huge 0 for the LA Times. Decades later, years after Richard Montañez became a Flamin Hot success, the ex-cleaner has risen through the corporate ranks and is now the vice president of multicultural sales in PepsiCo America, which is Frito-Lay's holding company. He is recognized as one of the most influential Hispanic leaders in America and is a talented speaker who tours the country delivering speeches. He is also the author of best-selling book A Boy, a Burrito, and a Cookie. The stories written in his book, Flamin Hot, would soon hit the big screens, as Fox Searchlight Pictures is currently working on a biopic with Montañez's life and career under the same name. He still resides in Rancho Cucamonga, where alongside his wife and children, he gives back to the community through charitable donations. He also teaches NBA classes in a college in town. Recently, one of his students asked how he's able to be a top lecturer without a PhD. Montañez replied, "I do have a PhD. I've been poor, hungry, and determined," in his usual witty tone. Now that's a flaming hot trail of achievements. What do you think? Was Richard Montañez's story inspiring and one worth believing? Or was it just a hot lie? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.